Hello everyone, this is Kathleen and I am excited to come and talk to you today about the first style in our style series of videos discussing style and the elements and the characteristics that allow us to make a journal in that particular style. We're going to start out, as I mentioned, with Shabby Chic. So I have made this kind of mood board illustration so that I can point things out as we discuss it. And then once I go through kind of the things that are typical for Shabby Chic, then I want to take you through a little quiz, kind of a visual quiz, just to see if we can pick out some things that are shabby chic next to other things that are not necessarily shabby chic. And then I want to show you my mood bin, which is some of the things that I have started to collect for the journal that I'm going to make with you. So let's go through the typical shabby chic elements. So I have made this, let me make sure that I have it fixed so that you can take a screenshot. Let's do this half first, and then we'll move down to this bottom part. So with all of the styles that I want to do in this series, I'm just going to talk about these kinds of characteristics: dominant colors, typical motifs, the textures, and other common elements. Let's just kind of start with the dominant colors. So characteristically, shabby chic is often pink. Pink is the most typical of the shabby chic colors, but there's also like a powder blue, a mint green, lavender, butter yellow, and definitely white or off-white. Gotta have white. Yeah, there are other colors, and you can kind of play around a little with the different tones, the values within each of those colors. But typically, shabby chic is definitely on the pastel side. Okay, so now what about motifs? Florals of all kinds are shabby chic, and in particular, the cabbage rose is like one of the most typical of the shabby motifs. But any kind of florals is going to work. Any kind of botanicals such as trees and herbs and fruit. Always bees and butterflies and birds. French labels are really popular. French kinds of filigrees, like patterns like this damask pattern, that's very popular with shabby chic. The script, like, I don't know if you can see that kind of behind there. Script, French script, well, French anything really lends itself to shabby chic. Labels are really popular. And then distressed paint. So here I've put a paint smear, but there are other kinds of textured paint that we'll get to in just a minute. Stenciling is very typically shabby chic. Decorative script of all kinds. Music, teacups, rustic implements like garden rakes or kitchen, spoons, household kinds of implements can be very shabby, especially if they are rustic or vintage. Frames of all kinds is typically shabby chic. And all of these things, can be found in other styles too. It's just that these are the kinds of motifs that you often find in shabby chic. Doilies. Definitely doilies, and these can be either paper or lace. Crowns, a crown, that's another motif that's really popular. Okay, now let's talk about textures. We have lace, smeared paint, plaster, like those kinds of molded plaster embellishments, or you can mimic that, you know, with texture paste. Basket weaves, wicker, wrought iron is really popular in shabby. Mirrors, especially if they're painted. Pearlized textures is very popular. So you see a lot of pearl or pearlized kinds of, and layers of all kind. Yeah. So other than smeared paint, we have some crackled paint and peeling paint, soft ruffles. So yeah, kinds of worn edges, fringes can be very shabby, chenille, yarns and bedspreads, velvet ribbons of all kinds are very shabby, and you often see in junk journals that are shabby these crinkled seam binding ribbons, and vellum. So as I thought about shabby, what I'm trying to do is to apply this shabby chic style to junk journalers particularly. Other common elements that, you know, were not listed up here with the motifs are things like decorative plates and china. So if we find pictures like that in magazines, that can be really effective in a shabby chic journal. Mercury glass, mason jars, vintage wallpapers, candlesticks, vintage buttons, postage stamps. In decorating shabby chic, they often have these little vignettes or small collections that sit on tables. We can adapt that to journals by making little collages. And mismatch silverware on the table, that kind of thing. And so however we can adapt that to journals and make them a little bit mismatched, that will help the journal seem more shabby chic. So let me just have you take a look at my mood board. I have several of these kinds of motifs that are represented here, just to remind me. You know, a glass perfume bottle on the dresser. We can include things like that. Some of the more beautiful magazines that you might find often have little photographs of these little vignettes, and we can harvest images of beautiful floral arrangements and that textures, that kind of thing. So I'll just have you take a look at this, and then I'll give you a little quiz. All right, so to help me out with this quiz, I'm going to show you this really cool digital kit. And this, you know, if you've been around me for very long, you know that I love making clusters. So whenever I see a good cluster making kit, then I usually add it to my collection. This is a digital kit. It's from Kara Brandon Creations on Etsy, and it is her ephemera cluster kit. And this is so handy to have, so I'm going to put a link in the description box to this kit. But she has put this kit together because sometimes you don't want bulky clusters. And so she has already designed all these beautiful clusters. But I just want us to see, so this is not particularly shabby. That's beautiful, and it's more in the vintage style, as is this one. They could both be shabby if you put some lace on there or use one of these other motifs that we were talking about earlier. But there is a couple on this page that I think stand out as shabby. Maybe you can pick them out. I think it's this one and this one. This has a bird cage. That's a real typical shabby motif or image. There's the paper doily and all these little butterflies. Yeah, that's very shabby. And And this represents shabby because of the elegant, this filigree clock. So that's also definitely a shabby image that would be perfect on a little cluster or in this little vignette that you might want to create. Okay, a couple more on this page. So I'm thinking definitely this one. That one just stands out as shabby. Many of these others are quite shabby, but they could be made more shabby. For instance, this one, if you put some lace, a soft ruffle or a silk, you know, like a silk ruffle, that would definitely make that one shabby too. And then this one. This has a little lace flower here. It has the label right here, very shabby. It's pink, and then this little filigree frame with the cameo in the middle. Yeah, beautiful, Kara. Okay, now this page is pretty vintage, I would say, but there is this one little one down here. Those roses, very shabby. This pink tag, just the right color. Yeah. Again, here's a pink ticket and this beautiful little Victorian die cut. Some vintage tape. So that's shabby. This one could be shabby. It's just a little bit plain, do you see? And if you dress that up with some lace along the edge or maybe another little sticker on top. Yeah, and then this one, definitely shabby. Yep, here again, see there's the paper doily, the ribbon, the rose, the ruffles along that cuff. These two are very shabby. So I hope that you're catching on to the motifs and the dominant colors, the textures that are shabby chic. Let me give you a little tip about making clusters. If you are a beginner and don't know how to make clusters, you can just let Kara Brandon teach you how to do it. And what I mean is, Kara has this kit and it shows these different pieces of ephemera that we often have or can make or can find. Kara has a lot of these little images in different kits. And so you can use these like templates. That's kind of what I wanted to tell you. You don't have to have these exact same images, but if you have an actual slide or can make a little frame of some kind, you can cut a little butterfly from somewhere, put it in the middle, put the frame around it, put the tape there, find a little sticker or a little die cut, and make a cluster that looks quite similar to that. It doesn't have to look exactly like that. The same as here. You can find a little circle of some kind, put a little piece of lace behind it, add a sticker and a ribbon, and you've got a darning cluster. So if you want, you can just use this kit as a design template for ideas for how to put clusters together, because Kara is such a wonderful digital designer, and any of her kits would be perfect to use to just kind of get an idea about how to arrange images into a cluster. So there's that little digital image cluster tip. Let me show you what we've got next. So I have gone through my stash and I have chosen papers for signatures. I think that I will do either one or two signatures. These are the printed pages that I have for the signatures. These are all, they're not digitals, they're scrapbook papers. So I have 2 of those. I may make this 2 signatures or 1. And then I just have pulled typical pages from my paper stash that would also go in. Got some coffee dyed paper. This is an avocado dyed paper. And some book page about florals. Here's a doily. This is called a ditzy print, and ditzy prints are also typically shabby chic. They're just these little tiny flowers or other elements, leaves, calico kinds of prints. Yeah, the quilters sometimes call them ditzy because the little images are repeated over and over again. Here's some shorts. Isn't that a pretty color? It's just the end page from a book. I got my typical papers that I can weave the ribbon in. Yeah, so I'm ready for that. And then isn't this a pretty page? This was an Anna Griffin paper that's been in my stash for quite a long time. And it's just really, it oozes shabby chic because of the cabbage roses and the crinkled ribbons. Very shabby. So these are the papers I have, and then I have made my cover. This came from some curtains out of my mom's house, and they were in the guest bedroom, and I ended up with at least one of them after she died, and so I have used those. Here is a cabbage rose. This is the front. I haven't decided yet whether I'm going to do a separate, like a stacked closure that closes with ribbons, I think, or I will do a collage, one or the other. But I have that ready for the signatures. And then I have a bunch of stuff here, typically shabby, that I will use to decorate the journal. So I'm going to stop the video right here, and then I will be back with part 2 with the signatures sewn in, and we'll start to decorate. Thanks so much for being with me today, and I will be back with a journal that is ready to decorate, and then we'll have a couple videos about some techniques that will help enhance the shabbiness of your shabby chic journal. Thanks very much. I'll see you again with that project.